Welcome back. I don't know, just drew it out there a little bit. Welcome back to Countdown to Restoration with me, your host, Danny Thompson. So glad to have you with us yet again, or for the first time. Either way, we're glad as we chronicle the days of the thief in chief. Yeah, the thief in chief. Yeah, there he is. All right, have a good day, bud. Yeah, we keep counting down the dark days of the Biden regime. Episode 144 here. There's been many more days, but that's the number of episodes. If you'd like to watch the other 143, Rumble channel DANWT and YouTube channel Danny Thompson. It's missing one. Yeah, they didn't like what we said about the election in one point. I don't know why. I don't know. The poster child for the Biden regime, Dr. Richard, or is it Rachel? Yeah, it's Rachel Levine. That's what he goes by these days. All that's changed really is the hairstyle and the clothes. Maybe. I don't know. That's all I understand. I can neither confirm nor deny any other changes, nor would I want to. This just goes to show you how messed up the Biden regime is. Some people need big news stories to figure that out. We just look right here and say they don't even know that she is a he. That's right. But these people know. A little new music for you. Suggestion of my lovely wife. And we celebrated our 21st wedding anniversary yesterday. So here we go. Bye, Doc. Enough of that. Enough of these people, but you need to know who's guiding the ship in so many areas. Secular Democrats of America. You can find them at seculardems.org, where they are promoting the road back to the place we've never been, to be a secular democracy. We have never been a secular anything, nor have we ever been a religious anything. We are kind of a hybrid, and we certainly have never been a democracy. So these people just don't know anything. One thing they do love is abortion, so they hate this. I love it. Texas becomes first state to implement fetal heartbeat law after Supreme Court declines to act. That's right. When the appellate court said, we're not even going to hear it, canceled the case. Canceled the hearing. Emergency appeal made to the Supreme Court, and they said, we're not going to hear it either. So the law went into effect today. Now, I don't think that part's great. Some of the parts of the law, I don't even know how it's going to work. But anyway, a Texas law banning abortions after a fetal heartbeat can be detected went into effect today on Wednesday morning after the Supreme Court and a federal appeals court failed to act on emergency requests to stay the law. The law was signed by Governor Greg Abbott in May and has been challenged by various abortion providers. A fetal heartbeat can usually be detected about the 6th week of pregnancy. 12 other states have passed fetal heartbeat laws, but they have all been struck down by the courts, making Texas the first state to successfully implement the measure, according to the Associated Press. And the result of this, Texas abortion clinics turning away patients as strict new law takes effect. Yes, and we have this to say. A little line dancing in celebration.
God bless Texas.
And this, little Louis Armstrong, that's what I think. Yeah, if I can get it to work here.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Amen, Louis. I'm telling you, of all the bad news we've had, this is good stuff. This is good stuff. But the Bidens the horrible regime did put out a statement. Today, Texas law, SB 8, Senate Bill 8, went into effect. This extreme Texas law blatantly violates the constitutional right established under Roe v. Wade and upheld as precedent for nearly half a century. I guess the Supreme Court didn't think so, and they're the ones that kind of decide these things. And, just think of this. If you have a constitutional right that is so buried that only a court decision can bring it out, is it really a constitutional right? And why is this the only constitutional right that can have no limits put on it? Every other one seems to. This is an unstated, unwritten, this is a derived constitutional right from a right, the right of privacy that does not exist in the Constitution. So it's a derived right from a derived right, but it's supposed to have no limitations. They are not saying you cannot get an abortion. You just can't get it after the baby's heart is beating. I don't have a problem with that. The Texas law will significantly impair women's access to the health care they need. It will not do anything to stop health care. It is to stop killing babies. That's not health care. Particularly for communities of color and individuals and low incomes. And outrageously, it deputizes private citizens to bring lawsuits against anyone who they believe has helped another person get an abortion, which might even include family members, healthcare workers, front desk staff at a healthcare clinic, or strangers with no connection to the individual. That's right. If you participate in an illegal abortion, you can be sued. So, I don't know how that's going to work there. That's the part of the bill I've never understood. My administration, not mine, his, is deeply committed to the constitutional right established in Roe v. Wade nearly 5 decades ago and will protect and defend that right. Well, guess what? We find out in the press conference, they really don't have any way to do it because the Supreme Court wouldn't hear the case. There is, unless they make something up, I guess they could sue them for stopping their constitutional right, but the case went to the Supreme Court. Supreme Court wouldn't stay the law. So that's what threw them, ladies and gentlemen. They really don't have many places to go, if any, other than passing a law, and this is what Jen said today.
Secondly, obviously in Texas with the law with regard to abortion, the president said in a statement he will protect and defend Roe versus Wade. How does the administration plan to do that?
Well, we put out a statement from the president this morning, but let me just reiterate some of the key points, and I will, of course, answer your question. As the president said this morning, its extreme Texas law blatantly violates the constitutional right established under Roe v. Wade and upheld as precedent for nearly half a century. It will significantly impair women's access to the health care they need, particularly for communities of color and individuals with low incomes. It also deputizes private citizens to bring lawsuits against anyone who they believe has helped another another person get an abortion, which might even include family members, healthcare workers, front desk staff at a healthcare clinic, or strangers with no connection to the individuals. This further isolates individuals who are facing this tough choice. And I would note, for those of you who didn't see, people who report, who for these private citizens could get up to $10,000 for reporting somebody who's seeking an abortion. So our focus and the president's focus is to reiterate our deep commitment to the constitutional right, of course, established by Roe v. Wade nearly 5 decades ago, and to continue to call for the codification of Roe, something that the president talked about on the campaign trail, the vice president talked about on the campaign trail, and this highlights even further the need to move forward on that effort. Go ahead.
See, the way they feel, and this is how all liberals feel, if given a choice, and I'm just surmising this, but I'm just talking about the way they really feel about abortion. If given a choice, I guarantee you, Biden would send every troop back to Afghanistan, take over the country, and keep troops there forever if he could get Texas to drop this law. That's how much they want to kill babies and how upset they get when they can't do it. And so it just really makes me say this again.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
I mean, really, when things are going so bad, man, you get a little ray of sunshine in. Thank you, Lord, for that. Man, I couldn't believe the appellate court passed it up, but the Supremes did too. Oh, man. All right. Lots of news today. I'm telling you, when everything's going, you ever notice this principle in life? When things are going bad, things just pile up, you know? It just, you hit a bad, an unlucky streak. And of course, none of this is luck. This is just this isn't bad luck for the regime. This is just incompetence. But, your incompetence finally shows. I don't know. What do you think, Johnny? I bet the same thing. Because it just keeps getting worse for these people, and I can't think of a crew I'd like to see things get worse for than them, except it's, kind of some things that they mess up on really hurt a lot of people. 2 top Food and Drug Administration officials resigned over the Biden administration's booster shot plan, saying it insisted on the policy before the agency approved it, reports say. Well, we've known from the beginning they're not following science. Remember way back, and there's articles on it. I don't have time for it all. You would not believe. There are so many negative articles on the Biden regime now. Not just from conservative places, but from everywhere. It's just, they're just going bad. Reminded me of back in Carter's day when Ted Kennedy, who, Carter was a Democrat, Ted Kennedy was a Democrat. I was thinking about this earlier. Ted Kennedy said, "This is so bad, I've got to run against a sitting Democratic president. Yeah. And that just further sank Carter's political ship. This is getting bad. We're not even through the first year. Good grief. We've known they haven't been following the science. We knew that way back when the CDC said teachers didn't really have to be vaccinated, and they said, the Biden regime said, yes, they do. And then they talked, and said, which one was it? And then they said something about kids not having to wear masks or something. And Jen said she would, Dr. Rochelle Walensky was speaking in her capacity as a private person, not as the head of the CDC. I mean, they're no different than any other political machine. They think politically. So they do what they think will help them politically. People are getting sick with the shots. So it's making people question, should I get the shots? Of course, have we showed it? Did we show it? I don't remember. It's been so long since we, had such a heavy focus on Afghanistan, which we will get back to. That just having COVID right now is better immunity than having the shots, just about. If you've had it before. The FDA announced the resignations of, get that a little bit bigger, Marion Gruber and Philip Krause on Tuesday. The pair lead the FDA office in charge of approving vaccines. Politico and Endpoints reported they left in frustration over Biden's COVID-19 booster shot plan. Some people with integrity, you just gotta love it. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration announced the resignations of two top vaccine officials on Tuesday, and reports said the two were leaving in anger over the Biden administration's plan to roll out COVID-19 booster shots before officials had a chance to approve it. Also, some news that, they feel that the whole thing has been rushed from top to bottom. Dr. Marion Gruber, the director of the FDA's Office of Vaccines Research and Review, and her deputy, Dr. Philip Krause, plan to leave the FDA in October and November. BioCentury first reported the news on Tuesday. Wow. It's just like, In a letter announcing the resignations obtained by the biotech industry publication Endpoints, Dr. Peter Marks, the director of the FDA Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, praised the pair for their work during the COVID-19 pandemic. He didn't give a reason for their departures. But sources told Endpoints and Politico that Gruber and Krause were upset with Biden administration's booster shot plan. The administration announced last month that most people would be offered a COVID-19 booster shot about 8 months after vaccination. Remember that? Yeah. One former senior FDA leader told Endpoints that Gruber and Krause were leaving because they felt that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention was making vaccine decisions that should have been left to the FDA, and were upset with Marks, the leader of their division, for not insisting on the agency's oversight. The source said the final straw was the Biden administration's announcing the booster shot plan before the FDA had officially signed off on it. A former FDA official told Politico that the resignations were tied to anger over the FDA's lack of autonomy in booster planning, while a current official told the outlet that the pair were leaving over differences with Marks. Well, maybe this was the differences. When asked about these reports on Tuesday, Jeff Zients, the White House's coronavirus czar, said the decision to start booster shots was made by and announced by the nation's leading public health officials, including the acting FDA commissioner, the CDC director, the Surgeon General, the director of the National Institutes of Health, and others, none who have reviewed and studied this, I guarantee. Having reviewed all of the available data, it is in their clinical judgment that it is time to prepare Americans for a booster shot, Zients said. He said the administration had also been very clear throughout that this is pending FDA conducting an independent evaluation and CDC's panel of outside experts issuing a booster dose recommendation. The FDA, Gruber and Krause, did not immediately respond to insiders' request for comment. Well, the question came up, as you might expect, and of course, Jen's letting her know we always follow the science. We're science people.
One on COVID and Afghanistan, second one on Afghanistan. Specifically the boosters. President Biden has pledged to follow the science in the fight against COVID, though some experts have expressed some concern. The decision to make boosters widely available this September is a bit premature, and that it was made before health experts were able to fully weigh it. So here's my question. What can you tell people who are concerned that the desire to get ahead of the virus has actually put us out in front of the science instead?
Well, first of all, we always lead with science. And let me just reiterate some things for anyone who's expressing a concern. This was a decision made by and announced by the nation's leading public health officials. Everyone from Dr. Rochelle Walensky, the head of the CDC, Dr. Janet Woodcock, acting FDA commissioner, Dr. Francis Collins, NIH director, and Dr. Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. They reviewed mountains and mountains of available data on vaccine effectiveness and made a clinical judgment that boosters would be needed and announced a plan to begin them in September, subject, of course, to the FDA and CDC processes to continue. We also know that there needs to be a plan in place to implement these booster shots around the country. But I will tell you that this was a recommendation made by our nation's leading health experts based on mounds and mounds of data. There will still be a final piece of this process that will be seen through, but our responsibility and our objective is to save more lives, protect more people, and as soon as this data, the science made clear that boosters would help do that, we wanted to put that information out to the public.
You may have moved too soon on this one, but I'm still betting that somehow the FDA is going to approve, don't you? I just got that feeling. Who, the World Health Organization, tracking new COVID variant named Mu? Who's tracking Mu? I'm just silly enough that I find that funny. Warns it could be more resistant to vaccines. That's not good. The World Health Organization said it has identified a new coronavirus variant of interest named Mu, also known by its scientific name B.1.621, in its weekly pandemic update Tuesday, warning it was becoming increasingly prevalent in Colombia and Ecuador and shows sign of possible resistance to vaccines. And if it's in Colombia and Ecuador, it's coming here, ladies and gentlemen. It's walking in across the border. I don't care what they say. I mean, come on. No, nothing's getting across the border. And we're supposed to believe that? Well, we're going to do some things besides Afghanistan, even though we have so much on that. Hey, some environmental news as we look to the, the U.S.'s envoy to the world on climate change, John Kerry. Man, you can tell he was in the military. Look how straight he stands. This is kind of interesting. UN weather disasters more common, costly, but less deadly than in the past. Maybe climate change isn't so bad after all. Weather-related disasters have become more common and more costly over the past 50 years, but so far have killed fewer people than catastrophes in the past, according to a new report from the United Nations Weather Agency. So, man, no need to be upset about that. We'll have to leave that. We've got some money news. If you are an ABBA fan, they are coming out with some new music either September or October. I don't know which, but yeah, supposedly. Delta variant. I learn all kinds of things, scouring every bit of news I can to show you how horrible this corrupt regime is. No praise over jobs so far in August. Delta variant has dented job market. Private sector added disappointingly low 374,000 jobs in August. Ouch. Not good at all. The labor market added only 374,000 private sector jobs in August, missing economists' average expectations of 625,000, and prompting experts to warn the Delta variant of COVID-19, which has thus far had only a modest impact on the market, could be starting to curtail the economic recovery. Yeah, that's not good at all, is it? What is this? We'll see. Oh, yeah. Biden, and I think we reported this through the midst of all the Afghan stuff. And we have so much more of that to go. I can't remember all the other news. Republicans rip Biden administration for massive food stamps increase, abusing its authority. I think at the end of September it takes effect, like a 30% increase. Republican lawmakers lambasted the Biden administration on Wednesday over its giant food stamp expansion, accusing the White House of abusing its authority by unilaterally approving the largest permanent increase in benefits in the program's history, a move that could cost taxpayers an additional $20 billion annually. In a letter to Agricultural Secretary Tom Vilsack, Reps James Comer of Kentucky and Don Bacon of Nebraska questioned the administration's dramatic and indefinite expansion of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which will be formally implemented in October. Taxpayer-funded SNAP assists low-income Americans in meeting their nutrition need, the lawmakers wrote. But based on recent actions, the Biden administration is abusing its authority and expanding SNAP without congressional authorization. And that they are, and I'm sure that will end up in court, as it should. The White House more than doubles its inflation forecast in new update. This from a couple of days ago, but we're getting it in now because it's important. This is just temporary. It's not going to hang around. The White House more than doubled its forecast for annual inflation in new projections released last Friday, as supply chain disruptions stemming from the COVID-19 pandemic continue to put upward pressure on prices. At last count, ladies and gentlemen, there were 44 container ships waiting to enter LA Harbor. The most ever. They're just sitting out there. Prices just steadily going up. The Office of Management and Budget said it expected consumer prices would rise 4.8% in the fourth quarter from a year earlier, up sharply from the 2% rise that the Biden administration forecast in May. Officials see these price pressures quickly abating next year, though, with consumer price index rising 2.5 in the fourth quarter of 2022, more than the 2.1 they expected in May, and reaching 2.3 in 2023. Of course, they have no idea. They're just hoping. The updated projections are consistent with other independent forecasts, including from the Federal Reserve, reflect the administration's view that price pressures, while higher than expected earlier this year, are likely to fade over time, administration officials said Friday. But not really in time, in this, but don't worry if you're a federal employee, which he does have the authority to do this. Biden to raise pay for federal employees effective January 1st. So inflation won't really bother them. That way they protect their very loyal federal employee voting base. Stock market crash. Expert warns S&P 500 will drop 80% as Fed tightens reins on quantitative easing and other stupid programs they've been doing that makes everything artificial. And as I said, over record-breaking 44 container ships are stuck off the coast of California. They cannot get unloaded. And, it's a combination. They don't have help at the docks. They don't have enough trucks to take everything off. It's really, really bad. We don't have time for foreign affairs. But we will do this.
Make a run for the
trust me, while Biden and company have been bogged down in Afghanistan, the foreign affair world has not gone well and is not going well. This, is this that important for such a busy day? Yeah, I guess so. It just shows, everybody's upset with them. Biden DOJ, that's Department of Justice, seeks to preserve border officials' power to turn away asylum seekers. A federal attorney argued the government had the right to do so, even if it doesn't intend to use numerical caps. See, this is just another way the Biden regime likes to be on both sides of an issue. Say, oh, we're letting more people in, which makes their people happy, but at the same time, have the right to just let Border Patrol people, etc., just turn people away to keep the numbers down so they don't look so bad and everything else, and say, oh no, we're for letting people in, but we're going to start turning people away. Obama did a lot of that, and Biden's doing the same. A Justice Department attorney argued Tuesday for American immigration officials' authority to limit the number of asylum seekers allowed to cross into the U.S. from Mexico each day, even as President Joe Biden's administration is attempting to distance itself from the Trump administration's policy imposing caps on asylum applicants at border ports of entry. Of course, the court said, hey, remain in Mexico's got to stand. So I don't know who's crossing. During a hearing before a federal judge in San Diego, immigrant rights advocates squared off with the federal government attorney sent to advance a somewhat dissonant argument, renouncing the prior administration's approach while preserving the current one's legal right to reinstate it. That's the way these people work. It's like, this is horrible, it shouldn't be, but we have the right to do it. Alexander Halaska of Justice's Office of Immigration Litigation told U.S. District Court Judge Cynthia Bachant that the present administration is reassessing the policies that officials often refer to as metering, but which critics call a turnback of asylum seekers. The queue management policies at issue are under review, Alaska said, adding that revised guidelines are expected within 60 days. I tell you, this group reviews more than anything else I've ever seen. And they should keep this. I'm for doing this. Let them say, hey, we've reached a number we can't take any more in. But it's just the way they go about it. These are the most dishonest, disingenuous, just aggravating people in the world. And they end up making everybody mad. What they do, unlike Obama, he could keep enough people happy. These people just make everybody mad on both sides, even their own people. Alaska insisted that the policies were designed to prevent operational emergencies that overwhelm border facilities, creating dangers and unsanitary conditions for both immigrants and border officials. The metering policies are geared towards preventing those emergencies before they occur. Yeah, because if you're not letting people in, you're probably not going to have a housing emergency, etc. However, an attorney for the immigrant rights group Al Ultralado said evidence obtained since the suit was filed in 2017 showing that the policy was not linked to emergent exigencies. I'm not sure. When I first read it, I thought it said emergency. So excuse me on that one. And applied even when facilities had ample space. As a matter of fact, there are no operational emergencies in the record before you, said Stephen Medlock of law firm Mayer Brown. Medlock also said the Biden administration's statement of its intention shouldn't affect the course of the litigation. I don't think the government's commitment to withdraw those memos should have any effect in this case, intended to keep the government from ever doing this again, the lawyer said. So again, the lawyer's saying you can't do both. You can't be on both sides of it. You got to pick one side. Medlock said, it's like Biden saying, it was my decision, but Trump made the decision. But I take responsibility for the decision, even though Trump made it, but I made it. What? Pick a side, Joe. Medlock said the central problem with the policy is that it amounts to the executive branch imposing limits on asylum rights that Congress never restricted in that way. See, they care about what the executive does when it gets in their way, but other than that, they don't care if it gets into a conservative way. Defendants acted in excess of those statutorily delegated powers by creating false discretion. To turn away asylum applicants, the lawyer said, they create discretion for CBP officers where none existed. There is no wiggle room for them. Well, you're coming in illegally, I don't know. Once an asylum seeker is in the process of arriving in the United States, they must be inspected and processed, Medlock added. An executive branch agency is not allowed to amend a statute simply because it isn't working out for them. And we will remember that argument. Another attorney for the immigrants, Bahar Azmi of the Center for Constitutional Rights, which these immigrants have none yet, emphasized that the legal obligation not to turn back asylum seekers with meritorious claims. So that's the thing, with meritorious claims. Well, if they don't have them, can't come in. Is rooted in U.S. shame over a ship, and this is a bad thing. The St. Louis that was filled with about 900 Jewish refugees from Germany that was refused permission to dock in Cuba, the United States, and Canada in 1939. There is a movie about that. Started watching one time and was interrupted and never got back to it. It's a sad, sad episode in world history. The boat returned to Europe where more than 200 passengers were eventually killed in the Holocaust. That is what the norm is designed to prevent and what the government is systematically violating here. Azmi said, it's one of the most important norms in international law. Well, okay, international law, it gets deep. Part of the problem I have is this isn't the only country that's been struggling with the issue of pushback, and I'm just not sure that it's gotten to the level of all the international community agreeing that is an international norm. I struggle with that, Bashant said, the judge. Azmi said the norm has been accepted by over 240 countries, but the judge said it was not clear that all countries grant asylum at their borders or avoid steps to drive asylum seekers away from checkpoints, which the judge is quite correct. Bashant appeared to agree with the immigrant rights lawyers that the prior use of numerical caps, some early versions of which date to the final months of the Obama administration, contravene the statutes Congress has written that don't impose such limits. Don't you have to go to Congress and say, change the statute? We can't comply with it? Bashant asked Halaska. So, getting kind of deep there. The government hasn't abandoned its statutory obligations, the DOJ attorney said, noting that immigration officials process more asylum seekers each year from 2017 to 2019. So, man, and boy, more border news, but we're going to have to move on. So we run to the border and we run back, well, to the world that Joe created from Afghanistan.
Welcome to my world. Won't you come on in? Welcome to my world. Built with you in mind.
All right, many things, and none more disturbing than this. British embassy directed Afghans to Abbey Gate of Kabul airport hours before the attack. British officials told Afghans to go to an entrance of Kabul airport hours before the suicide bombing that killed almost 200 people, including 2 UK citizens, leaked emails have revealed. This is just bizarre. Despite US and UK officials having intelligence about an imminent terror threat, the British embassy instructed people to use the Abbey Gate near to the Barron Hotel where the blast happened. The blast on August 26 claimed almost 200 lives, including 2 British nationals and 13 U.S. Marines, and injured hundreds of others, not all Marines, but okay. An Afghan interpreter who was saved from the attack because he ignored the advice of British authorities said it would have been madness to go there. If I had followed their advice, I would be no more. I said that I wouldn't because I don't feel safe. The situation was getting worse, he said. It would be madness to go there, and that saved my life. It was our own judgment that saved our lives. And they're investigating. No one knows why that happened. I mean, did someone hack the system? Something to watch. Wouldn't that be awful if the terrorists drove them there? Oh. NBC News reporter was there to deliver a final kill shot to the Biden promise about Afghanistan. NBC. I'm telling you, all kinds of media are upset about Biden and company's policies toward Afghanistan and his lies. Joe Biden emerged from his afternoon nap to address the nation about the end of our war in Afghanistan. He was all over the place. It was a chaotic address. It was largely emblematic of our shambolic departure from the country. See, I'm not the only one who thought that was a poorly designed speech. It was a failure, and we left Americans behind in Afghanistan. Why? Well, it's because the Biden administration caved to the Taliban's deadline. Biden said it wasn't arbitrary, it was. And now we have this empty promise that the U.S. will work to get anyone who wants to leave Afghanistan to safety. That could prove difficult, as hostage situations could arise and the country is primed to resume where it left off prior to our 2001 invasion. That being the Taliban fighting the now reconstituted Northern Alliance and other tribes that oppose them. Civil war will break out. And now that Al-Qaeda and ISIS are on the prowl, this could get messy. And it's going to. And I'm telling you, I guarantee you the military has plans on how to go back in. Yet circling back to our final hours, NBC News was there to throw cold water on an Afghanistan talking point that Biden had tossed out there with ABC News' George Stephanopoulos. You might remember it. We're going to stay in the country until every American is out. Well, that died a quick death. And in the waning hours of our time in the country, Richard Engel was there to deliver that narrative, its final kill shot. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel on Americans wanting to leave Afghanistan. There's no possible way at this stage that the U.S. is going to get everyone out who wants to leave or who may have changed their mind and decided that they now want to go and don't want to ride it out with the Taliban. We're in the final hours now, Engel told MSNBC host Andrea Mitchell on Monday. There is quite a bit of activity over in Kabul, according to witnesses, with drones and fighter jets in the air. The smaller the footprint gets, the more dangerous it is, and ISIS has made it clear that it wants to get its parting shot. I hope those who want to leave can leave. The Taliban has lists with names of Americans and key Afghan allies on them. They were given this information by the Biden administration because this is the new policy, it would seem, trust terrorists. It was meant to help streamline Americans and SIVs, special visa persons, to the airport in Kabul, which was chaotic to say the least. Now the Taliban has kill lists, which the regime says they don't, but who knows? Reports are they're going house to house killing people. Biden touted how so many people got out. Around 90% of Americans. 90% is the new 100% in Biden land. For days, all media outlets, even those friendly to the administration, called them out for peddling narratives that simply did not reflect the realities on the ground. This was yet another example of that. Even CNN called out Biden for the serial failures at the airport. It was not easily accessible. Americans were being beaten by the Taliban. This wasn't like checking in at Dulles, Joe. We all knew that. We all knew you were going to leave our people behind. A little thought there from Town Hall Matt Vespa. And pretty good thinking there, Matt. Pretty much what happened. This I bring you just to show it. And there is reporting that the Pentagon left behind service dogs, and then the Pentagon says they didn't. I don't know, so I'm not getting into it. This lady, U.S. woman left behind in Kabul with 130 rescue dogs thanks to Department of Defense no-fly animal policy. A Tennessee woman who owns an animal rescue center in Kabul was not allowed passage home by the Department of Defense because she carried a disabled puppy in her arms. One of 130 animals she was ordered to leave behind in the final days of airlifts, which probably the animals in the hangar, I don't know why they would have let them in, were hers. And of course the Taliban, being strict Islamists, they don't care a lot about dogs. Probably going to kill them. Charlotte Maxwell Jones refused to board the plane with her puppy on Monday, so the military ordered her to leave and turn loose 130 crated dogs that mostly belonged to Americans and Afghans who evacuated, according to the social media postings. This occurred even though Maxwell Jones secured flights from nonprofit organizations that had permission to land in a neutral country. She left the airport after being stuck there for 6 days and returned home to an uncertain fate. I like dogs. I really do. I grew up in a family that had dogs. My mother loves dogs. Most of my family does. A lot, just... I'm getting on the plane and leaving the disabled puppy behind. That's just me, but I don't know. Some people should have called the United Kingdom. They got dogs out. All right, we have some Afghanistan questions, as you may figure.
And we're hearing about some journalists who were left behind. Fox confirmed that a number of journalists working for U.S. Agency for Global Media, a federally funded agency, Congress, including Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty journalists were left behind. And we're now also hearing from some senior State Department officials who were available to so many that they were instantly ubiquitous, that those priority groups could not get through. Was that a contingency that was planned for?
Well, Jackie, I think it's important to remember, again, 120,000 people made it out of the airport and out of the country. And our commitment to people who want to evacuate, want to leave, American citizens, journalists, Afghan partners who have stood by our side, is enduring and remains. I know there's been some reporting on this, so let me give you just a couple of examples, because now we can talk about this, of some of the ways that we work to get American citizens out. One, the most used method was the muster point, or what we called the muster point. The state to bus them into the airport in convoys or escort people on foot. We offered multiple opportunities for each of these muster points at various times, each with multiple transits to the airport. The majority of American citizens who got out were evacuated exactly this way. We also talked people through one-on-one walking into the airport with State Department officials on the phone, on the other effective at resolving problems on the ground, one by one in challenging environments. In limited cases, and some of this was reported, where people were trapped or in immediate danger, U.S. security forces went beyond the wire, sometimes even a helicopter, to pick people up safely. We didn't talk about these much, these helo hops, at the time, because they were dangerous missions. We didn't want to create the expectation that we'd be sending a helicopter for everyone who wanted to leave Afghanistan. So I note those because I think it's important to understand the steps and the roles that our U.S. military on the ground took, far beyond just checking people off on a list at the gate, to ensure we could get American citizens, our Afghan partners, and others out. And we will continue those efforts through the means I just outlined. I'm going to go into details of a private conversation, but what we saw over the course of the last few months is a collapse in...
Sorry, went a little long long on that one. That's for another segment coming right up. We have another question about those left behind. If you're religious, this should spark a note.
Do that.
Just one more quick one. One of your colleagues over at the State Department briefed reporters earlier today saying that anecdotally they thought a majority of folks in the SIV pipeline did not get out. I'm not minimizing the 100,000+ Afghans that did get out, but is there any particular specific frustration given the President's commitment to those who helped American personnel on the ground? The majority were not able to get out of the country.
Well, first I would say that of the numbers, and I know Ed asked a question of this, and you all have been asking understandable questions about the breakdown of numbers of people coming out, and that is information we hope to have for you very soon. But 77% of the people who were evacuated were Afghans at risk. SIV applicants, P1, P2 applicants. Obviously, there's a range of programs, and the different names of them mean virtually nothing to most people in the American public, but that is a number that stuck out to me from the largest airlift in U.S. history. Are there more people who want to leave Afghanistan? Absolutely. Are there more people who will be eligible for our programs? Absolutely. And that's why we are so focused on the diplomatic efforts that are being led by the State Department, including a presence in Doha, including efforts to engage with the Taliban, including efforts to work with the international community to make clear what we expect. What is also true is that every person who wants to leave Afghanistan and come to the United States is not going to be able to do that. And that is a sad truth, but it is something that it's important for people to also understand. But I will say, we still want freedom of evacuation and movement for people who want to depart. Go ahead.
Now, if you are a careful listener, you may have noticed she answered neither one's question. Just told how many people got out. They were asking about people left. Why were they left? Why were so many special immigrant visa holders not left? I mean, not shipped out. Who was shipped out? Well, the reporter asked yesterday, hey, we're hearing a lot of people with connections and different people that, maybe didn't have special visas, etc., etc. They were got out. No, we're not even going to talk about it. That didn't happen. No, we got out 100,000. That's what they keep saying. I mean, what about these journalists that were basically paid for by America? They were hired by us. Why didn't they get out? How come most SIV holders didn't get out? And as this question, as Jen is walking away, she actually answered it, if I can get things to work here. Well, why is anybody supposed to believe you're going to get them out? Come on.
With them. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. See you tomorrow.
What about Americans left behind in Afghanistan, Jen? The president said the buck stopped with him. Can you care to elaborate on that? What is the president plan to do to get Americans back home?
He also said yesterday he's getting them home, and we're going to do exactly that.
Thank you, Jen.
We said. Yeah, well, that's just got to warm everybody's heart. Oh, the Biden administration said. Can I find that real quick? This other one's important. Where is that? Oh, you just wouldn't believe how many things I have. It's like digging a hole in sand, and it just keeps, more sand just keeps falling in. Where is that? Anyway, it's coming out. Even people in the regime were horrified that they didn't get everybody out. Anyway, I don't see it right off, so we'll go to this because this came out. Somebody leaked a Biden phone call with transcript. Exclusive before Afghan collapse, Biden pressed Ghani, the former president, to change perception. They knew things were going bad, ladies and gentlemen, and they thought if we could just get you guys to act a little different, this will get better. In the last call between U.S. President Joe Biden and his Afghanistan counterpart before the Taliban seized control of the country, the leaders discussed military aid, political strategy, and messaging tactics. So, and we got the readout on the phone call. But neither Biden nor Ashraf Ghani appeared aware of or prepared for the immediate danger of the entire country falling to insurgents, a transcript reviewed by Reuters showed. So, this is a big deal. People want to know. The men spoke for roughly 14 minutes on July 23rd. On August 15th, Ghani fled the presidential palace and the Taliban entered Kabul. Since then, tens of thousands of desperate Afghans have fled, and 13 U.S. troops and scores of Afghan citizens were killed in a suicide bombing at the Kabul airport during the frantic U.S. military evacuation, and not everybody got out, did they? Yeah, not everybody got out, Joe. See, 90% and 100%. Reuters reviewed a transcript of the presidential phone call and listened to the audio to authenticate the conversation. Boy, somebody worked hard to get that out. The materials were provided on condition of anonymity by a source who was not authorized to distribute it. In the call, Biden offered aid if Ghani could publicly project he had a plan to control the spiraling situation in Afghanistan. Now, isn't that quid pro quo, ladies and gentlemen? Isn't that what Trump was accused of? Biden, of course, meeting with, forgot the country, Ukraine, the president of the Ukraine today. So you do what I want, we'll give you some more aid. Now, ladies and gentlemen, why isn't he being impeached by the Democrats? We will continue to provide close air support if we know what the plan is, Biden said. Days before the call, the U.S. carried out airstrikes to support Afghan security forces, a move the Taliban said was in violation of the Doha peace agreement. The U.S. president also advised Ghani to get buy-in from powerful Afghans for a military strategy going forward, and then put a warrior in charge of the effort, a reference to Defense Minister General Bismillah Khan Mohammadi. Biden lauded the Afghan armed forces, which were trained and funded by the U.S. government. You clearly have the best military, told Ghani. You have 300,000 well-armed forces versus 70 to 80,000, and they're clearly capable of fighting well. And as we have showed you, they did not have a standing army of 300,000. That he was including police and other security forces. The army was not near that large. Days later, the Afghan military started folding across provincial capitals in the country with little fight against the Taliban. In much of the call, Biden focused on what he called the Afghan government's perception problem. It wasn't a perception problem, Joe. It was a real problem. I need not tell you the perception around the world and in parts of Afghanistan, I believe, is that things are not going well in terms of the fight against the Taliban, Biden said. And there is a need, whether it is true or not, there is a need to project a different picture. And it's not about, I guarantee you this call was not about what was going on in Afghanistan, the perception there, but the perception that Europe had, because Europe was upset with Biden for pulling troops out. Biden told Ghani that if Afghanistan's prominent political figures were to give a press conference together, backing a new military strategy, that'll change perception, and that will change an awful lot, I think. Perception. I mean, we're talking politics, and the whole country's falling apart. The American leader's words indicated he didn't anticipate the massive insurrection and collapse to come 23 days later. We're going to continue to fight hard diplomatically, politically, economically to make sure your government not only survives, but is sustained and grows, said Biden. The White House Tuesday declined to comment on the call. Politically. No, the Taliban doesn't care about politics, Joe. They care about hot lead, things blowing up, mainly them. After the call, the White House released a statement that focused on Biden's commitment to supporting Afghan security forces and the administration seeking funds for Afghanistan from Congress. Ghani told Biden he believed there could be peace if he could rebalance the military solution, but he added, "We need to move with speed." Well, you didn't. We are facing a full-scale invasion composed of Taliban, full Pakistani planning, and logistical support, and at least 10 to 15,000 international terrorists, predominantly Pakistanis, thrown into this. Now I haven't heard about Pakistani involvement, but obviously the president of Afghanistan, who his country is facing this, seemed to think the Pakistanis were involved, which would have changed the equation, and I think would probably have warranted a little bit more U.S. involvement. But obviously, Biden and his brilliant people didn't think so because, well, and how could they? They didn't even know how big the Afghan army was. They still thought it was 300,000 strong. Afghan government officials and U.S. experts have consistently pointed to Pakistani support for the Taliban as key to the group's resurgence. Well, why didn't we do something about it? We keep talking about pressure. Why didn't we pressure them? The Pakistani embassy in Washington denies those allegations. Duh. Clearly, the myth of Taliban fighters crossing from Pakistan is unfortunately an excuse and an afterthought peddled by Mr. Ashraf Ghani to justify his failure to lead and govern, an embassy spokesman told Reuters. Reuters tried to reach Ghani's staff for the story in calls and texts with no success, I imagine. The last public statement from Ghani, who's believed to be in the United Arab Emirates, came on August 18th. He said he fled Afghanistan to prevent bloodshed, mainly his own. By the time of the call, the United States was well into its planned withdrawal from Afghanistan, which Biden had postponed from the May date set by his predecessor, Donald Trump. We salute you, sir, President Trump. The U.S. military had closed its main Afghanistan air base at Bagram in early July. As the two presidents spoke, Taliban insurgents controlled about half of Afghanistan's district centers, indicating a rapidly deteriorating security situation. Let's just change the perception there. We're looking like losers. We want to look like winners. Afghanistan was promising a shift in its military strategy to start focusing on protecting population centers, major cities, rather than fighting to protect rural territories. Biden referred approvingly of that strategy. He said that doing so would help not just on the ground, but in their perception internationally that was required to shore up world support for the Afghan government. I mean, the whole thing, he's just talking about perception. I'm not a military guy, which is quite obvious, so I'm not telling you what a plan should precisely look like. You're going to get not only more help, but you're going to get a perception that is going to change, Biden said. So obviously, before the phone call, they just got around Biden in a little circle and just said, the key word, Mr. President, is perception, 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 perception. We need a different perception. Did I say perception? Do I get my favorite ice cream afterwards? Yes, for every time you mention perception, Mr. President, you get an extra scoop. I will say perception a lot. Ghani, oh, is that disrespectful? Too bad. Ghani, for his part, assured Biden that your assurance of support goes a very long way to enable us to really mobilize us in earnest. Your country is being taken over. You're not mobilizing in earnest? I mean, these... You've got two leaders of nations talking with people dying, people going to die, and they're talking like they're working out a trade agreement. In a little over 2 weeks after Biden's call with Ghani, the Taliban captured several provincial Afghan capitals, and the United States said it was up to the Afghan security forces to defend the country. These are their military forces. These are their provincial capitals. Their people to defend, Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said on August 9th. On August 11th, U.S. intelligence reports indicated Taliban fighters could isolate Afghanistan's capital in 30 days and possibly take it over within 90. Instead, the fall happened in less than a week. Well, we've got some good intelligence sources, I'm telling you. The Biden-Ghani call also underscored persistent political infighting that plagued the Afghan government. This changed the perception. That'll stop Taliban in their tracks. When Biden asked him to include former Afghan President Hamid Karzai in a press conference, Ghani pushed back. Karzai would not be helpful, he said. He is contrary, and time is of the essence. We cannot bring every single individual. We have tried for months with President Karzai. Last time we met for 110 minutes, he was cursing me and he was accusing me of being a U.S. lackey. Well, what do? Biden paused before responding. I'm going to reserve judgment on that. What? Karzai could not be reached for comment despite calls and texts to one of his aides. You know, it's just a bizarre world there, ladies and gentlemen. Just a bizarre world in Biden land. Sorry. Second call with top staff. In a follow-up call later that day that did not include U.S. President Biden's National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, General Mark Milley, and U.S. Central Command Commander General Frank McKenzie spoke to Ghani. Reuters also obtained a transcript of that call. In this call, too, an area of focus was the global perception of events on the ground in Afghanistan. Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, told Ghani, the perception in the United States, in Europe, and the media sort of thing is a narrative of Taliban momentum and a narrative of Taliban victory. We need to collectively demonstrate and try to turn that perception, that narrative around. That wasn't the perception, that was the reality. See, they just didn't want to look bad because them withdrawing and the Taliban overrunning the country looked bad. It's just beyond belief sometimes. I do not believe time is our friend here. We need to move quickly, McKenzie added. A spokesperson for McKenzie declined to comment. A spokesperson for Milley did not respond by publication time. I know we're going long here, but we do have some comments on questions on it, and of course, we don't really get an answer.
And one on Afghanistan, there's some reporting that we'd like to confirm regarding a call in July, between President Biden and former Afghanistan President Ghani. One, that both leaders appeared completely unaware that the Taliban would take over, and secondly, that they discussed plans to project that Afghan forces were still in control. Is that accurate? Can you tell us a little bit more about that call?
Well, I'm not going to get into private diplomatic conversations or leaked transcripts of phone calls. But what I can reiterate for you is that we have stated many times that no one anticipated, the vast majority, I should say, there may have been individuals and agencies, so I don't want to eliminate that option, but our national security team and no one in Congress, or I would say most people out in the public, anticipated that the Taliban would be able to take over the country as quickly as they did, or that the Afghan National Security Forces would fold as quickly as they did. So even the content of the reporting is consistent with what we've said many times publicly. I'll also note something that the president said in his press conference around the same time of this reported phone call. The Afghan government and leadership has to come together. They clearly have the capacity to sustain the government in place. The question is, will they generate the kind of cohesion to do it? And what the president conveyed publicly and certainly privately as well, repeatedly to Afghan leaders, as did reminded our national security officials is that it's important that the leaders in Afghanistan do exactly that, lead, and show the country that they are ready to continue to the fight against the Taliban, that they have the will for the Afghan National Security Forces to continue that fight even as our U.S. forces leave.
Did the president at that point in time have some sort of a perception that even the former president of Afghanistan didn't have that confidence in the Afghan forces? Is that why maybe he was pushing Ghani to be more stern and to be more confident?
The president has consistently conveyed, and I just noted an example publicly, that the Afghan leadership at the time needed to do exactly that, lead. They needed to come together in a cohesive manner. They needed to be united. They needed to show the country and the Afghan people they were going to fight and they were going to lead through this transition, even as U.S. forces left. That is entirely consistent with what he has said publicly throughout.
These people couldn't plan the evacuation and withdrawal from a kid's bounce house. I'm telling you, it's just... In this, the Fox reporter gets cut off in mid-statement or mid-question.
I'm going to go into details of a private conversation, but what we saw over the course of the last few months is a collapse in leadership. And that was happening even before Ghani left the country. What the president has conveyed repeatedly, privately, and publicly is you need to stand up and lead your country. And that's something he said at a press conference in July in public forum as well. Go ahead.
They did not like that leaked transcript at all. Wonder, you know, kind of what goes around, comes around, something like that. Comes around, goes around, whichever way you want to look at it. Well, we know because we have some inside information, and the world knows because somebody leaked a transcript. You just gotta love it, I'm telling you. All right, try to get this in quickly. Thanks for staying with us late the last couple of days. And I didn't even get to a portion, I'm telling you. And, you know, man, that coming out about the FDA people being mad over the booster shots, the phone call coming out, on top of everything, it's just, what a mess. Wouldn't you hate to show up for work every day if you worked at the White House? They're happy with the speech and feel that Afghanistan has been explained. Obviously, this was from last night. It's what they were looking forward to. We can move on. Yeah, right. They feel everything has been explained, defined, and defended. They have laid out their work and put responsibilities where they should be on those that were part of it all. But Biden said he took responsibility. I don't know. They're reaching out to the press to see their views and to understand them. Obviously not very well, although some had a little more conciliatory tone. Some of the reporters did toward Jim. They did not fail. That's their point of view. They did not fail, and everything that they did was for the greater good. They want good reports on their effort. Over 110,000 people got out, even though many were left behind, especially the ones you said you were there to get. Now that seems like a Biden thing, doesn't it? I want you to get me a loaf of bread and come straight home. Oh, I didn't get the loaf of bread, but look what all else I got. Got 110,000 other items, but left the bread. Oh, we did great. Everybody cheer. Yeah, as we're eating sandwiches just of meat and cheese and lettuce and tomato and whatever else and mustard and mayonnaise with no bread. Well, you can make a lettuce wrap. Oh, yeah, that makes it all okay. That's these people. They made a lettuce wrap. How many of you really like a lettuce wrap? Why do you want to hold the lettuce? I don't understand that. They are ready to move back to domestic issues. They have signaled to the Security Council and State Department to try to head off any more news that would take away from their domestic agenda. Well, they didn't. And also, the domestic agenda is falling apart. Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor, feels safe, but Blinken is worried about his future. He is one of the few that thought they should move slower on the withdrawal, but also was the first one pointed to when everything started going bad, since the embassy staff didn't give them much help. The embassy staff in Kabul kind of missed a lot of things. But then the regime didn't pick up on what the embassy staff was saying. Remember Biden saying, we get mini cables. Just a little bit before you got a cable saying, we get mini cables. So, and also the Pentagon's upset with states saying they were moving way too slowly on getting people cleared for transportation, etc. They want the country to move on, but there are many problems within the regime. Many. And we couldn't get to them all today. There's so many, but we'll give it a try tomorrow. God bless you. Pray for those still in Afghanistan. Pray for one another. Pray for the country. Things aren't good. So pray for one another. Thank you for watching. Please feel free to share, write, comment, do the line dance to God Bless Texas. Anyway, we will see you tomorrow. Have a great day.